so you'll always remember being there. And it's the kind of thing, if you don't tell the story or somehow label these items, who would know? I mean, we really do have the external life and the interior life.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And of course, the meaning is often very personal unless it's shared. And as someone who's just recently sold a house where I lived for 15 years and, with the accrued stuff of my life before that, and finding it hard to let go of some of these, what my kids might have called knickknacks. But of course, for me, they are bundles of memories that were special enough that I kept said item. I could really relate. Cool.
Yes, I just did a similar move and the same thing. And we all learn, the more time that passes, the more precious these objects become. I learned when my kids were in elementary school that if I didn't go through the artwork and sort of pick one or two, if I ever got to the end of a whole year, it became impossible to throw things away.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Now, I detected you have another potential job you could take on, and that's as a participant in Jeopardy, or go to England and win a pub quiz. Oh my goodness, the amount of factoids and details of historic significance at any given time throughout the timeline of your talk. Everything from Frank's sign, which is about the crease in the earlobe that could suggest future cardiovascular disease or diabetes, or night terrors, or Houdini and his wife with their passwords, and historic events like 1969. Most people think of the moon landing, but you said, and maybe that's because the characters were living in the Boston area, they were all talking about Chappaquiddick, So
right.
You have so many real life things embedded into your story. It's just amazing. I learned a lot.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, I learned a lot, because I really tried to just enter that time period as best I could, wherever Lil was at the moment. I really tried to indulge it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, like you said, you have 4 characters with the primary points of view and a few sub-characters. When you're writing something like this, do you form out the characters individually, separately, or do you sort of run them in parallel, and through their interaction, the story develops into its fullness?
It's a little of both. I feel in the opening, I usually have some notion of the personality of the person, but they really do grow and change along the way. Harvey, the 6-year-old, I think that it's a challenge to get a child's voice on the page, and yet I really wanted to be true to the way a child thinks. And so I gave him, all kinds of very childish interests, and indulged my own adolescent sense of humor. But what really developed his character for me is when I realized, he was born with a cleft lip, and so has a scar that he's self-conscious about. But it occurred to me that he's only self-conscious now because other people have pointed it out to him. And so I really wanted to try to catch a child right on the cusp of total innocence and what happens when society inflicts judgment and opinion. And so for me, that's Harvey, and he still represents for me that kind of unbridled honesty that a child has in saying exactly what he thinks when he thinks it, which I just think is, you know, kind of wonderful in childhood for many reasons.
For sure, for sure. And also regarding that and Harvey and Frank, because of course they in the end finish off the story, not to give anything much away, but that interaction in the end is really sweet and sort of liberates them both, doesn't it? It liberates them both.
Yes, yes. And that was something I didn't necessarily know that was coming. That's a good example of, you know, a novel takes on its own momentum, I think. If you invest the time getting to know the characters, they really do kind of find their own path.
Well, you did interject at the end. Of course, one of the minor players was Shelley's other son.
Yeah.
And he actually, though he didn't make many appearances, he actually had a pivotal role.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, in my earliest draft, he had a point of view. And you know, that's a good example. I tend to overwrite, and then, you know, for me, much of the revision process is then cleaning house and getting rid of what's not necessary. Yeah, after here talking about hoarding all the little keepsakes, on the page, I do like to clean house. And
like killing your
get
darlings.
rid of what is extraneous. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's tough. That's very tough, isn't it? Yeah. Well, speaking of killing, you know, the character Shelley, also working in a courtroom, had, as you said, a heightened sense how terrible humans can be. And yet, you know, that obviously spoke of her life experience and a kind of hopelessness. But at the same time, you bring us to redemption, I think. How do you want readers to feel as they read and then end the story?
Well, you know, when I wrote Life After Life, at the end of it, there was an unsolved murder, and I had so many people who were upset with me that I did that. Even though at the time I chose what I thought was a very realistic ending. Unfortunately, I think there are many people who are somehow invisible in our society, and things happen, and justice is not served. And that's the choice I made for that novel. But I heard from enough readers that once I had Shelley working in the court as a stenographer, I thought, oh, well, I'll just have the trial. So readers of Life After Life can see justice played out. And so that's how that particular trial wound up being there. But yes, Shelley in many ways identifies, you know, she's basically seeing her life in different ways through everything she observes in that courtroom. And so, and of course, her shorthand is a kind of language that to Harvey just looks like chicken scratch.
Right, exactly. Well, oh my gosh. So it's a rich and, what shall I say, captivating story, Hieroglyphics by Jill McCorkle. And I recommend you go get your copy, which is being featured at Miami Book Fair this year. So Jill, where can we send people to get a hold of you or buy your book?
Well, my publisher is Algonquin Books, and through their website there's contact info, And certainly people living right there in that area, I mean, books and books, or, you know, an order to your favorite independent bookstore. That would be my first wish.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Lovely. Very nice. So that's Algonquin Books, ALGONQUIN books.com, I presume?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your time and inspiring us with your observations and how you've just miraculously whipped up a magical story in hieroglyphics. And thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much, Donna. And again, I apologize for my phone dinging along the way. I'm always so afraid to touch anything once I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Well, it might be that you just had a good idea and the universe is dinging you just to say, oh, another good idea for a next book.
Oh, I like that. Like that. Thank you so much.
You. My pleasure. And I want to thank our listeners as well for tuning in this week. We hope you'll join us next week on SOBradionetwork.com, where you can also find archives of past shows of Living Legacy Leadership. And also check out my website, GameChangerThinking.com. And do remember, the life you live is the legacy you leave. Bye-bye now.